Welcome to Green Building Matters, the original and most popular podcast focused on the green building movement. Your host is Charlie Cicchetti, one of the most credentialed experts in the green building industry and one of the few to be honored as a lead fellow. Each week, Charlie welcomes a green building professional from around the globe to share their war stories, career advice, and unique insight into how sustainability is shaping the built environment. So settle in, grab a fresh cup of coffee, and get ready to find out why green building matters.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Cicchetti. Once a week, I have a cool job. I get to interview a green building professional, someone in the world. And something I've spent a lot of time on in my career in the last 3 years is technology in this built environment. And I have got one of the foremost experts part of his day-to-day. I've got Michael Beckerman here. He's the CEO of CREtech. I've been to some of his conferences before. I can't wait to kind of hear his story. And then, of course, what's the latest with all things technology in the built environment. So, Michael, welcome to the podcast today.
Hey, Charlie, thanks so much for having me. I'm a huge fan of your podcast, and I love all the great work you're doing on trying to mobilize, inspire the built environment to decarbonize and adopt a lot of these green solutions and technologies. So I'm a big fan, and I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Means a lot, man. Let's give everybody that kind of origin story. Where did you grow up and go to school?
Yeah, going to be quite, I don't know. I think we might lose some listeners, Charlie, pretty quickly once I start talking about my journey. I grew up in a town in New Jersey, sort of central New Jersey. I did not graduate college. I dropped out pretty early, pretty quickly. I just realized it wasn't for me. And I had kind of a non-traditional background, so upbringing, I went to work early. So I just started, lots of odd jobs and things like that. And so, yeah, man, I feel like
School of Hard Knocks.
School of Hard Knocks. I like that. That's about right. When I stand up in front of my kids, they just roll their eyes. But that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks, man. And I know you got 20 plus years in kind of the business side, the PR side, the marketing, some time with Antenna in there. So just, what was it like to kind of, 20 plus years there, under one kind of shingle. And then we're going to, of course, talk how the heck did you get into prop tech and climate tech? But, what'd you do for a bulk of your career there?
Charlie, for me, again, it's my journey. I don't think it's unique or special or inspiring. It's just mine. I'm somebody that sort of just always gravitates towards the blank canvas in life and in my career. So I'm not afraid to try things that I don't know anything about, that I have no business doing. So when I was in my early 20s, I had to survive. I had to make some money. I had to live. I had to eat. So I had like 2 or 3 part-time jobs. And my folks had like a sort of a graphic design sort of shop, and I would work for them. And then I got a little taste for like the marketing side of the business. And I just always loved media. I loved journalism, and I was just an avid consumer and reader of all content at that time. This is way, 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 way back then. And so I started a PR firm. I don't know why. I don't know how. I didn't know anything about it. I think I found a press release, what it looked like at a library, and I just started copying it. In the beginning, I was doing it for, it was myself, and I was doing it for a couple different industries, a couple different clients, figuring it out as I learned every single day by the mistakes that I was making, which is continues to be the source of great educational lessons for me in my life. So I stumbled upon the real estate industry, and, it was probably a couple of years in. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I read a book about, and I started following crazy stuff like these sports agents and these talent agents. And I was like, I remember reading this book about this guy, Lee Steinberg, and he only represented quarterbacks, and he was like a talent agent. I was like, maybe I should just specialize in representing real estate companies. Let's see what that looks like. And it enabled me to scale it, with that kind of strategy. And so I scaled that over 20 something years. Big agency, up to about 100 people. It was only commercial real estate clients, big ones, a lot of your clients now down the consulting business. And then I was doing it until I really didn't enjoy it anymore. And I got kind of bored with it. I got bored with myself. I was just dancing in the dark. And so I was like, okay, it's time for something else. What's next? So kind of figured out how to leave that business and just poking around like, well, I only know commercial real estate. I don't know any other industry. What else is that industry missing, needing, where I could go? And it was technology.
Wow. And you were in it early. We're going to bridge that. With the PR side, you end up in commercial real estate. One thing I like to ask my podcast guests is, did you have any mentors along the way? Sometimes you have a formal mentor, sometimes informal, somebody you look up to or follow, and then sometimes no. So sounds like
no.
Any mentors? No mentors.
No, I didn't.
You've probably been a mentor to others. Hey, I've had 300 guests, so there are several that have told me what you just said is, "No, man, I made this path, and now I'm a mentor to others," and I love that too. So,
I didn't really have any help. And I remember that, that was like sort of like tattooed in my brain that I was coming up. The people that were there before me did not reach out their hand. You have one or two ways to deal with that. You can either be resentful, or you can learn from that and not repeat it. So then when I went through that kind of experience, right, I learned that, okay, my whole DNA in business is going to be to help people. So I don't care if you're looking for a job, because I know you got a lot of students that you're helping. You need some direction on a career path. You're a startup looking for funding. You're a startup looking for clients. Whatever. I'm going to help, and that's how I've built sort of my this phase of my career. So no, didn't have any mentors. What I learned mostly from Charlie was just sort of reading books. I used to read a ton. I still do. So if I could, like I mentioned, I would read books about sports agents. I would read books about talent agents. There's a great book called When Hollywood Had a King about Lou Wasserman and how he built MCA. Man, I can't tell you how many times I read that book because I just picked it apart. And so I would always just read a lot of those sort of books, but not the ones like How to Get Rich Quick or anything like that. It was about the human sort of struggle to build things, not even just business, but things like I would read Viktor Frankl's book. I would read, just anything I could do about the human condition, I would read.
You had a lot of mentors through the books, and that's something I do ask later. We'll have to put a link to that book that you just read. That's amazing. To our listeners too, what wisdom there, what a great nugget is. Just through reading, you can get access to these people that are really teaching it from their learnings. I love that, man. So,
one thing on that, Charlie, man, I've never seen in my whole career so much great content today to learn from, like your podcast, right? Learn from Charlie's podcast, listen to it. There are great other sort of TED Talks that you could read, watch. There's just so much content to learn. So anybody that's not leaning in on sort of that kind of content like yours, you're really missing out on a great, great, great source of inspiration and knowledge.
I appreciate that shout out. All right, so let's talk about technology now in the built environment. You've been spending a lot of time in it. You've built companies around it. You host conferences around it. But just what kind of keeps you busy day to day? And in a minute, I'm going to ask you, Michael, to demystify what's the difference between CREtech, climate tech, con-tech. But tell us a little bit about your world now. What are you seeing? And maybe you can demystify some things for us.
Yeah, so we started 2017, as I said, we started organizing conferences at CREtech. So the first one, I don't know if we had 20 people there or whatever. And then the last one, we were up to about 4,000 people per show, New York and London. And it's been very much about what they call, which I don't like the term, but we'll use it. We'll throw it out there because people don't know it, prop tech. So this is technology for the built environment, mostly commercial real estate. So office buildings, multifamily, logistics, self-storage, et cetera, et cetera. We don't really do much on the resi side, on the consumer side. So we've been doing that, built out a pretty big audience, but 150,000 people follow us, get our newsletter, what have you. And then, it's just, as a long-time sort of environmentalist, terrified about the climate crisis, terrified about the planet that my kids are inheriting because my generation either did not believe the science or failed to, or just ignored it. So when I learned that the built environment was 40% of all carbon emissions, it just dawned on me. I said, okay, This is your life's mission now. So all these roads have converged. Commercial real estate. You have a foundation in tech, big platform now. Let's now really start to build out that audience. And what does that look like? So, trying to inspire the developers, the owners, the asset managers, and what have you, to lean in on tech solutions to help decarbonize their buildings and the construction process. As you know well, what we call the embodied carbon marketplace. So right now, every single day, I'm just attracting and trying to help new emerging startups that are focused on that. And then, connecting with the big landlords in the world or regional landlords, any landlord that wants to understand how they can, make their buildings cleaner and safer and healthier and make a positive impact on the planet. And then the venture is a big part of my industry as well.
Yeah, because, you're a trusted source of truth, right? You're a source of truth there. So I don't know if you've heard the phrase, the word net weaver, right? So you can connect and net weave, not just network, but you're a net weaver. That would be the compliment I give you.
I love that, man. I love that. I'm going to use that, net weaver.
Yeah, net weaver. But, help us, for those listening, is prop tech the overall umbrella and climate tech fits in, or no, climate tech could be batteries and carbon recapture? How do you demystify these different labels?
So that's a great question. So what I think about is I lean in on built world, right? The built world or the built environment, right? I say this at my conferences. In our industry, I tell people, when you start to label yourself as a different industry within an industry, you're pigeonholing yourself. And you're also saying to the real estate industry, we're separate from you. So what I just talk about is the built environment, whether you're using technology or whether for sustainability, or whether you're using technology for data information, whether you're using technology for building access, getting in and out of buildings and spaces, using your mobile phone and credentials. It's still just around innovation and technology in the built environment. So we could talk about climate as part of that built environment, overall story. So there's construction, there's sustainability, there's data, there's AI. It's all just one big marketplace. The commercial real estate industry, the built environment, is the largest industry on earth, as you well know, Charlie, measured by global GDP. It invests the least in R&D. So most industries are investing between 5 and 10%, healthcare, finance, whatever, in technology and R&D. The real estate industry is under 1%, not because it's archaic, not because it's slow to adapt, because it never had to. The industry's just worked well. It's operated well. You're in Atlanta, Charlie. Atlanta's a thriving city, right? Great buildings, great communities have been built without really using much more than Excel spreadsheets, right? So why do they have to? Well, everything's changed now. It's a flex office, back to work, whatever you want to call it. Office space is challenged. Tenants are looking for buildings that are very, very high tech now and very, very clean and sustainable. So the industry is having to adapt now and think of itself more as in the hospitality space than it is just like build it, they will come, we'll sign a lease, we'll see you later. Honestly, that's kind of how it's worked. Those days, we're not going back to those days. So it is very much now a customer-centric business industry marketplace, and technology helps real estate companies do two things. Right? It helps them lower operating costs, operate more efficiently, and it helps them attract and retain tenants and residents. And that's kind of where we lean in.
Right. You hit on two things there that I really also liked. Is just the pandemic forced innovation, even in the built world, but so does AI now. So does just everything speeding up. It's like this industry, the largest GDP, right? It's just, you got to do it. And then the emissions are tied to it 39-40%. So, man, I love that. So let's talk climate tech, because this is the Green Building Matters podcast. What are some really cool things you're seeing out there? Any trends, or just, you can even give a shout out to a company or two or technologies. What you're seeing, what's kind of giving you hope?
Yeah, a lot's giving me hope, actually, and a lot's giving me just absolute sheer panic, which you know well, buddy, right? Exactly. I'm optimistically pessimistic, or pessimistically optimistic, whatever. So, when you just take a step back, so you think about this marketplace, this industry, you take these big real estate companies, successful companies, a lot of them don't have the infrastructure to adopt vet, adopt, invest in these technology solutions. They're understaffed, they're under-resourced, and there's a lot of fragmentation in the tech sector. So there's 10,000 startups, technology solutions competing for still very small market share. That's prop tech. That is where we've kind of built CREtech. And then you move to the climate side. So now you're saying, well, it's the same thing. Do these companies have a chief sustainability officer? Do they understand a lot of these technologies? Do they have the resources? Do they have the budget? Because you know so well, Charlie, because you're doing so much great consulting work. Like, who's paying for this rip and replace of this HVAC from 50 years ago, Like you're talking like real dollars and problems. It's not so easy. It's just like, let's just go spend it. Every building is a snowflake, meaning every single building is unique. A lot of cases, every single building is owned, differently in terms of asset pools, ownership pools. So it is inherently, there's a lot of tension to get these technology tools adopted by the real estate industry to decarbonize. So what we're seeing now is, I would say, sort of like the low-hanging fruit. So a lot of real estate companies are leaning in to make sure their buildings are operating efficiently, right? Because why run a building at full power, right, at 2 a.m. when nobody's in it, or on Fridays when occupancy is 10%. So a lot of what's going on right now is like, get control of the energy management system. The next thing that's like going on is like, let's get control of our data. What is our carbon footprint? What is our carbon emissions look like? So there's huge sort of understanding of data. The other thing that's happening is like, there's a huge sort of focus now on risk. So there's a lot of startups that are really focused on climate risk mitigation, understanding the weather risk, the grid risk, the migration risk. Like, there's a lot of risk that's involved, because the real estate industry, we're starting to see it in many, many places where it's impossible to get insurance if you're a homeowner in Florida now. Now, I think that's also, happening on the commercial side. So it's really hard to get insurance. It's really hard to get financing. If you are in a flood zone, a fire zone, a drought zone, whatever, so a lot of it's on risk now. Where we're going, where I'm getting really super excited, is on the material side, on the construction side, low carbon concrete, prefabricated timber, low carbon steel. There's just so much happening. I think on the construction side, we're going to see a lot of it on the material side, which I'm super, super excited about. And there's a lot of, too well, Charlie, there's a lot of young people coming into this industry, man, that are coming to great schools like Georgia Tech, your alma mater, MIT, Stanford, Harvard, but doesn't have to be like the great schools, and these kids are choosing to address climate as, probably not the greatest, sort of path in the short term for, making money in these kids' career, but they don't care. It's like mission critical. And that gives me hope. And that's where my inspiration is, Charlie, honestly.
Yeah, the millennials, the Gen Z definitely want to work for a mission-driven company. And if they're coming out of saying, hey, I'll make that change through innovation, I love it. I love to see it. Well, we've got to talk a little bit about, say, AI, because I've gone to a lot of conferences in the last 2 months, including yours, and you've added a whole climate day, which I applaud you for. That's amazing. But a lot of these VCs that are on stage sharing what they're seeing, I heard two things in the last couple of months. One is that there should be a better IPO season next year, hopefully, that'll release some money to some software companies that have been successful, and that gets redeployed, hopefully, to the next batch of startups. We'll see. I hope so. But then AI, maybe 70% of a VC firm's research, time, and maybe investment is AI. Are you seeing that? Is it like you don't want to be caught 2 years from now and not have made an AI investment? I don't know. What's the read here, and how do you even do due diligence on AI?
Great question, Charlie. I had we had a small private event leading up to CREtech in New York a while ago for our annual conference, and it was about 50 or so of the largest real estate companies in the industry. Their chief technology officers, chief innovation officers, chief sustainability officers. And I got to tell you, Charlie, to a person, when we went around the room, it was sort of a open-ended brainstorm session that I led. To a person, they all said, my CEO is asking, what is our AI strategy?
The whole room.
The whole. And so what that told me was the whole ChatGPT, AI, ML, whatever vernacular is entering the corporate boardroom. It's there.
Okay.
And I've not seen this in my it's being read by everybody. They're seeing it in all the mainstream media, all the business publications. And so now it's coming from the top down. And then when you start to dig into it and say, what does that mean? I think it's going to revolutionize the real estate industry. I've talked to engineers, this is your marketplace, architects, construction companies, the ability to now with ChatGPT on the visual side, understand, to look at a site plan, to get comments on a site plan, everything from drawings to visuals to strategy to marketing to leasing to. It is going to revolutionize the industry. I have no doubt that this will be the big one for the real estate industry. And I think it's going to go fast. Who are the players there? Have they emerged yet? Not yet, but it's coming. And I think it's going to be real because it's going to give real estate companies a way to have a competitive advantage, lower operating costs, deal with issues like labor challenges that everybody has. So I think it's going to be revolutionary in this industry. I really do.
I'm excited about it too, man. So thanks for giving us your read on it. Let's get to know you a little more here. I'd love to ask my podcast guests, hey, what would you say is your specialty or gift?
But you're asking, if you ask my wife, probably not much. My kids, maybe then I'm, a goofball. I don't know. I think it's that, oh my gosh, I don't know. I don't think too much of myself in that regard. I think what I've learned is, just, the importance of just helping people and doing good. There's a great book called The Do-Gooder, I think it is, or The Go-Giver, something like that. Forget it.
Go-Giver, yeah.
Go-Giver, right. Sorry, I butchered it. I think it's just every day with a sense of joy and optimism and happiness, trying to help one person at a time, as often as I can. I think that's what I love to do. And it's just how I live my life. So
that is your gift. And we're getting to know each other even more. But I'd affirm you with two things I've learned about you. It's definitely, I can tell you never hesitate with generosity. And that could just be making a connection or just giving someone encouragement. And then you can use my net weaver, man. So those are two things I've seen.
I appreciate that, Charlie. That's really kind of you, man. It means a lot coming from you.
Yeah, man. And okay, just a few more questions here. I like to ask, a high caliber person like you, do you have any good habits or routines?
Because I don't consider myself a very intellectual person. I fumble and stumble my words. I'm a slow learner. I have to study things 5, 10, 15 times till it makes sense to me, So what I do is I lean in on, and I'm very, very disciplined with my habits. That's a great question. So I wake up the same time 7 days a week. I'm very, very organized with list keeping. I have habits like any email that comes into my inbox, I return that day, no matter what, regardless. I exercise and do, every single day, pushing myself as much as an old man like me can. I save time for reading every single day. So there's a lot of things that I do every day, and I work every day so that, I don't take days off. I don't work all Saturday and I don't work all Sunday, but I will put the time in to just make sure I'm on top of my stuff and my stuff is organized and my lists are organized. And so, I get stressed if I feel like I'm not sort of in control of what I have to do. So I'm very, 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 very disciplined on my routine and my habits every single day. And believe me, man, I have a lot of fun and I leave a lot of time for fun, whatever it is, music, friends, family. I enjoy life, but I'm very, very disciplined in what I do. I don't waste a lot of time.
Yeah, no, likewise, I can tell you're vibrant. And so you might be familiar with the book by James Clear, Atomic Habits. One of my favorite lines is, you don't rise to the level of your goals or ambitions. You fall to the level of your systems. And that's what you just explained. Hey, you've got these systems in place, these good habits that it's like, man, no matter what's going on, I'm going to stop here. I fall to the level of my system. So that's good stuff.
That's a great one. I got so many notes. You're giving me such good. I think the other thing that I've learned, Charlie, is that, not to get too personal, I practiced Buddhism for a while, and thanks to my wife, I practice, mindfulness, and I read a lot on that. And so it's also just I'm very, very, very disciplined about staying present. So my mind does not go back. My mind does not go forward. So I'm talking to Charlie. I'm locked in. So whatever I do after this podcast, doesn't matter what it is, I'm locked in. So my mind, I'm very, very, very disciplined with my thoughts because, there's a lot, there's only so much we could control in the world. So I could control my thoughts and where they go. That's what I've learned. And that's probably my single greatest sort of source of knowledge for any of the listeners is like really, really study mindfulness, because the amount of stress that looking back, looking forward creates in business and in life is just so unnecessary and it's so destructive, right? So a little preaching.
Man, thanks for sharing with us. It sounds like maybe it's implied that before some of your Buddhism studies and practices, maybe you've gained this with the being present, huh? And so it's a better version.
Yeah, that's why I read so much. That's why I'm this infinite learner. That's why I lean in. That's why I listen to podcasts like yours, because I'm just constantly learning.
Yeah, because, let's say we're in a conversation. If my mind is somewhere else, that's what's bringing me the stress. Probably not the current moment. It's that other thing we let in and our body language shows we're not there. And I love that, man. So thank you. Just a couple more things here. Hey, as we get to know each other more, I'm a fan of a bucket list. Some people want to travel, adventure, write a book. I don't know. What are a couple things maybe on the bucket list?
I absolutely have it. And I think about it. And, I try also to manifest. That's another thing that I lean in on pretty heavily is, just with great confidence that whatever I'm visualizing is going to happen. So the couple things that I have, I'm manifesting now in sort of the short term is I've got a big birthday coming up next year. It's not 40, it's not 50. You can go from there. And I want to take a trip, a solo hiking trip to some place that'll really inspire me. I'm not sure where. I'm looking at Greenland, Iceland. I'm looking at Peru. So something that's going to really challenge me and inspire me. I've not done anything. I hike a lot, but I've not done anything that's really, really pushed me. That's one. Two is I'm fortunate that I've had a beautiful piece of property that I've been a custodian of for about 30 years. And I'm manifesting that I have a farm there and a real working farm and sort of like live off that sort of land. So those are the two things that I'm going to go do next.
I love that on a bucket list because it's so visual. You literally know you're working towards that. If you want something with elevation, it sounds like you've got some planned. A mentor of mine, he's done the El Camino across Spain a couple times. So that might be one to consider.
Joey, I think I'm learning more on this podcast. I'm a net weaver. I got El Camino. I mean, man.
Fall to the level of your systems, Atomic Habits. Yeah. Just a couple more things here. All right, books. You've already referenced 2 or 3 awesome books. I'll put links, but it doesn't have to be anything about buildings. But just, is there another book, another go-to you'd recommend here to our listeners?
Well, so the Viktor Frankl Man's Search for Meaning is probably the most influential book of my life that I've ever read. I think, there's so many. I read so much. 3 that I just finished they're older books, so it doesn't have to always be new, but I'm always reading sort of nonfiction. So one I just finished was Lighter by Young Pueblo. Almost done with Not Fade Away, which is a great book that Chris Sacca, who I had the pleasure of interviewing, really recommended. And then Harry Crew's A Childhood is a really hard book about poverty and abuse and coming through that. And those are 3 that I've finished or just about to finish that I highly, highly recommend. They're great.
I'll put those links in our podcast show notes. Everybody's got to check out all these books. All right, last 2 things. Looking back on your career, is there any career advice, though, you wish you'd have known earlier?
Yeah, I think, I don't know that there's many people who make as many mistakes as I do on a daily basis, Charlie. So it's not so much that the mistakes or the decisions I made, because in my Buddhist practice, what we learn is that our struggles are our greatest teachers, right? So I've learned to embrace the struggle. Right? When I make a mistake, it's like, okay, well, why was that given to me? What am I supposed to learn from that experience? And then I do. I think the things I wish I knew when I was younger was more about the mindfulness, more about being present and letting go of the stress and the anxiety of like, the future, the unknowns. And, it's like I tell my kids, like, you have a thought that says, oh man, well, what if like next Tuesday I fail this test? What's going to happen? Or next Friday, if I don't, make the basketball team, what if? And I just try and help them and say, well, what if it does work out? What if it does go great? What if it's not that bad? So I just wish I knew a little bit more about the mindfulness practice when I was younger, because it would have saved me a lot of friggin' stress and anxiety, but I can't go back. But I think that's my only lesson. The mistakes are my teachers, so I don't regret any of them.
Man, that's a great one there. I love that. Because, some people can pull forward undue stress, and I love how you reframe it there. And just, as we start to wrap up, I'm just kind of reflecting on our conversation. I'm inspired by it. And it reminds me of one more anecdote. Patrick Lencioni, a great business author, he writes a lot of fables. He says, you really should want to work with people that are humble, hungry, and smart. And I'm getting a lot of that from you here, man. The humble, the humility, but...
Two out of the three, Charlie, I got the humble. I don't know. I mean, I don't even think about it much. I'm thinking about like what being smart means to me is just, being humble, being hardworking, and being kind. So if those are the criteria, yeah, I'll take it.
I'll give it to you. So, all right, last question. So let's say someone's listening to this podcast. They're really inspired by your story here. Let's say they're just now jumping in, though, to maybe it is on the technology side of the built environment, or maybe it's green buildings. But any words of encouragement to someone that's just jumping in right now?
Yes, that's the words of encouragement. Yes, join the built environment's race to net zero, race to decarbonize. It is the single greatest, I think, career path, personal mission, professional wealth creation, if that's important to you, which is great. It's a $20 trillion marketplace to decarbonize buildings. We have an opportunity to change the world for future generations. We're not relying on government. We're just going to build an army of sort of climate activists that want to make this their career path. Come on in. It's a great purpose-driven, rewarding career path. I have no doubt. I'm so excited to be on this journey with you, Charlie, because you're a trailblazer, man. The work that you're doing is just so inspiring, and you're helping that next generation find their path and in this space. So I just say, if you're looking for a career that feels meaningful, purpose-driven, and financially rewarding, I can't think of a better career than focusing on climate in my marketplace of the built environment.
Man, I'm fired up. I hope everybody's enjoyed this. Hey, make sure you check out all things CREtech, amazing events in New York, London, and more. Follow Michael on LinkedIn. He puts out great content, but also great commentary, because you're that, source of truth. And I'll give you an endorsement there too. So everybody connect, reach out, let them know what you thought of the interview. And I can't wait to hang out with you soon. And Mike, thanks for being on the podcast today.
I appreciate it, man. This was a real fun. So I've done a few of these in my day, and this is literally one of the favorite conversations I've had. So I appreciate the time, and just keep doing on the great work that you're doing, man. It's really great, inspiring.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. At gbes.com, our mission is to advance the green building movement through best-in-class education and encouragement. Remember, you can go to gbes.com/podcast for any notes and links that we mentioned in today's episode. And you can actually see the other episodes that have already been recorded with our amazing guests. Please tell your friends about this podcast. Tell your colleagues. And if you really enjoyed it, leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on next week's episode.